Welcome to Attitude of Altitude podcast presented by Planet of One. This podcast is designed to inspire change in people to become the best versions of themselves and live their best lives. We share stories of struggle and success to encourage and empower listeners to be bold, take action, and be the change we desire to see in this world. We are all part of this planet. We are all a planet of one. Know that your attitude determines your altitude in life. Welcome to the podcast.
Welcome, Ron. I am so glad to have you with us today. I've been looking forward to us connecting. I would love for our listeners and audience to really know who Ron Klein is and how you arrived where you are today, the achievements and the person. Would you really grace us with your background, how you got here?
Well, first of all, thanks for inviting me. It's a privilege to be speaking with you this morning. I know we had a little difficulty getting together for a while, but here we are. And basically, I'm a very senior millennial. I was going to say senior citizen, but I call myself a senior millennial because I'm still working. I tried retirement over 3 times and it didn't work. That's the only thing I failed at really hard. So, and I'm 85 years old and still going strong, and I hope to go strong as long as I can and keep contributing. My background is such where I'm classified as an inventor, but I don't call myself an inventor. I call myself more of an innovator because I take people's problems, business problems, personal problems, convert them in my mind and in their minds into challenges. And I tell them, I say, behind every challenge, there's a gift and an opportunity. And that's the way you have to look at it, because a problem is a frustration and a challenge is a challenge. Most of my challenges, I had no idea as to how many people they could affect in the world, but some of them were monumental. But my purpose was to solve the challenge and find that gift behind the challenge and help people. My earliest so-called innovation or invention was the magnetic strip on the credit card. That was back in 1966, and the patent was issued in 1969. And in 1967, I developed the multiple listing service for realtors, the MLS system. And also in the 60s, late 60s, I developed voice response for the banking industry, where you could put your account number in via the phone and get back your banking information in voice. And then it just went on and on beyond that, and I got very involved, and this is an interesting story, but very involved with the New York Stock Exchange. I did quite a bit of automation at the New York Stock Exchange and developed the bond monitoring and corporate monitoring trading system for corporate listed bonds. And then that carried on. That was in process and not in process, but that was in operation for over a quarter of a century. And then it moved forward to serving the, besides the New York Stock Exchange members, I served the Philadelphia Stock Exchange, the Chicago CBOE, the New York Futures Exchange, and on and on and on, and did quite a bit in the Treasury market also. So the point is, there's it's noted as quite a bit of accomplishments, but I just did my job. My job was, if somebody introduced a challenge to me, I came up with a solution, and I simplified everything. In other words, I looked at it in a very simplistic way, and I said, there's a given with every challenge, and there's a goal or an opportunity that we're looking for, and everything else in between is the journey, and you'll handle those things along the way. There are other challenges. And it came up to be where you don't have to be the sharpest knife in the drawer to solve problems if you simplify them, understand them, make sure there's a good line of communications, and then carry through. And I always end up saying that in order to be successful in life and be successful in your challenges and projects, you have to be, and I use my fingers, you have to be smart, daring, and different. And when I say smart, that doesn't mean you need a doctorate degree from Harvard. It means learn something new every day. Pay attention, be aware, gain as much knowledge as you can, because knowledge is power, and knowledge is very, very productive information. And with that information, don't be afraid to make mistakes. There are challenges, and if you make a mistake the first time, you're learning. It's part of a learning curve. And I use a little cliche of saying, if you painted something wrong the first color, paint it a different color until it's right. There's only plan A. And then the last thing that I live by, that being different, is whatever you do or whatever you provide must provide a benefit. If it doesn't provide a benefit, you're just actively performing a hobby. So that's it. Being smart, daring, and different, and simplifying it, you're really coming to the answer to solving challenges.
Ron, how did you arrive here? Was it your parents? Was it your background? What made that thinking possible for you?
Well, when I was young, I had of course, I grew up right after the Depression. I was born in 1935, so these were tough times. We were just about ready to enter into the Second World War, just came out of a Depression. People were struggling, but there was no internet, there was no email and things like that. So it was more or less centered around family. And I came from a middle-class family. My dad was a postal worker. My mom worked in a department store. But my mom's grandfather, her maternal my grandfather, got it, was a great inventor and my best mentor. I loved this man, and I stayed with him and hung around him a lot. He invented, in the early days, the steam propulsion mechanism for steamships, to drive steamships. And then during the First World War, he invented the first torpedo detector for submarines. And he was an excellent tailor. And he invented the pressing machine for tailors, the big pressing machines. And then when television first came out, it was introduced to me somewhere around 1946, he came up with the idea for rabbit ears. He invented the rabbit ears for television sets as the first antennas. So he was just so crafty. He was a diamond cutter. He was a magistrate. He did so much, and I spent a lot of time with him, and he was my main inspiration. So from that, I got the name the grandfather of possibilities, because whatever I think about, whatever I do, there's a possibility between and behind everything. And I just keep all my thinking in a very simplistic way and saying, okay, I used to be able to solve problems in grade school. Word problems were very difficult because there was so much information in the word problem. A lot of it was ancillary information. It was unnecessary. And you had to seek out, in this word problem, what's the given? What are they really giving you that will give you to beginning to solve? And what's the goal? What's the answer they're looking for? And everything else in between was the minutia. It wasn't important. You had to sift that out. And I always looked at that as my principle of thinking. And I said, that's the way you have to think. Simplify it, get everybody to understand it, and then just look for the answers. You learn something new every day.
Ron,
So,
I literally have notes.
Questions. Well, I can give a perfect example. One of the simplest challenges I had in my career, and this may sound strange, was the invention of the magnetic strip on the credit card. And people say, wow. And I said, if you were there with me, you probably would have handled it the same way. And I said, a director of a major department store came to me in the early 60s and said, Ron, we have a problem. People make what they call charge purchases. That's what they called them in those days. And they come in with their piece of plastic, which is a credit card, and it has their embossed name on it, and it has their account number on it. And the merchant would have to take that card And we would give them a book of all the negative account numbers every month, and a big, big, thick book. And he would have to look at the number and look up in this chronological order to see if your number appeared in the book. If it didn't appear in the book, then he put your card on this little mechanism that had a squeegee on it, a roller, and he would put this 3M paper in there, a receipt, and roll it. And then, I mean, it was a long process. And I said, well, what is the challenge? What is the pain point here? They said, well, it takes too long to make this operation go, to make a charge purchase, so that queues up the lines, especially at holiday time. And the burden was on the wrong person. It was on the merchant. He shouldn't have to make the decision whether you're good or bad. And I said, I think that's a pretty simple problem. So we've got to speed up the process and take the burden off the merchant. And they said, yeah, how are you going to do it? And I thought about it. And there was no internet at that time and no big PCs or things like that. So they had memory systems, big magnetic drums and big memory systems. And I said, let's take all those monthly numbers, put it into the memory system so that it catalogs it. And I said, then let's give the merchant a little keypad, connect that to the memory system. And if when he puts your number in, if the number doesn't come up on the memory system, you're good to go. And I said, well, that solves one half of the problem. It would speed things up a little bit, but the burden is still on the merchant. He's got to accurately put the number in. And right around that time, reel-to-reel tape recorders came out. And I figured, I know how that works because I'm an engineer. I said, yeah, you got two reels and you have a motor that keeps it at constant speed. You have this magnetic tape. People can record voice and music and songs. And I said, geez, if I could take a little piece of that magnetic tape, paste it on the back of that plastic credit card, and record your account number on that little piece of tape, build a little device that mimics the tape reader, and make you the motor. Slide that little card in that little device that mimics a tape reader. And if I didn't know how to do that electronically myself, I would have hired an engineer, but I was an engineer. And that's how simple it was. And it worked. And that was the patent. And that was the invention of the magnetic strip on a credit card. My challenge then was to help the customer. I had no idea or concept at that time it was going to affect billions of people all over the world. So that made me a big deal? No. It just gave me the ability to solve a problem.
And what is the latest problem that you're solving today? What is the latest invention you're working on?
Well, after my first, after I went through all these inventions and was building it, my company started growing. I built the company, and the company was growing, and I was up to 125 employees, and I had to go through all the series of raising funds to fund those people, because in those days everything was hardware oriented. There was no programming or software, and this was in the 60s and early 70s. Mostly in the late 60s. So we had to build circuit cards with components, and I needed assemblers, and I needed draftsmen to lay the cards out, and I needed engineers. So my company grew up to 125 people, needed money to fund it, and then the money was growing fast or going out of style fast, and we needed more money. So went back to my investors and I said, we're running out of cash rapidly. And they took me public, or trade on the public market. And the company started really looking very good. And it was attractive to a very, very large insurance company. And they said, we like what you're doing. We like how you're handling all your products and solving problems. We would like to acquire you. And I figured, let's see. At that point, I was 34 years old. And I figured, maybe it's time to retire. So I tried it. And we transferred everything, sold out. I took stock options and so on. And I retired and went fishing for 3 days. At the end of 3 days, I said, that's enough. I'm not used to this. I want to go back to work. I want to do my job. I want to contribute. So I went back to the company. I gave back all their stock options and everything. And then moved along and formed another little company. And I said, this time I want to come up with an idea where I can build residual income without it being labor intensified. And I moved into my next venture. That venture lasted for 36 years and took me all the way into the New York Stock Exchange. And I figured in the 90s, it was time to really retire. And my wife and I decided we're going to leave where we live in New Jersey and move to Florida and retire in Florida. Well, I moved to Florida and I figured I'm not ready for senior residence and I don't play bingo. I've got to do something. I still have to work and contribute because my mind is still active. And then I got into answering your question. I got into what can I do for some others and create and develop and come up with new ideas. And I developed an app and some little special labels, QR coded labels for the blind so they can help identify things when they're in close proximity. And then that grew to the next level of how can I make it applicable for the sighted? And it's growing and still growing, and there's a whole new theory behind that. So that's a whole new business. So I'm pretty active at 85 years old.
And what is that mindset that keeps you active, Ron, where most people will go, oh, I'm doing well, let me retire. What keeps you going?
The desire to contribute and do more in this world than just be an old guy. Because that's why when I introduced myself to you, I said I was a senior millennial, not a senior citizen. Because I'm interested in helping people, contributing, and creating anything. Well, for instance, right now we're going through such a period where people have to find a new way to reinvent themselves. And again, you don't have to be the sharpest knife in the drawer, but you have to learn something new every day, be aware, and learn. And from that, then you can develop and say, well, what can I do, not necessarily to be inventive, but what can I do to make things better? How can I go about making things better? What can I do to contribute to society and still monetize it, of course? And my whole theory of life is work until you're empty. Contribute until you're empty. And really help people understand themselves. And the one thing that I have, which is a tremendous advantage right now, I do have a lot of experience and knowledge from the past, but being a very, very senior person, I've gained a little bit of respect as a mentor because they say, all right, you've been there, you've gone through the ups and downs, and I've made a lot of mistakes along the way. That 36-year-old company, it went through lots of evolution, lots of mistakes, but I always had plan A. I always had a direction, and I fixed it. I painted it a lot of different colors along the way. So here I am now contributing in many ways. And everything I do with the companies and the products and the methodologies that I'm using, and they're intricate, provide a benefit. In other words, I don't go out and try and sell my ideas. I go out and find solutions for people's pain points. And where they have pain points, where their business is suffering, where they're having difficulty finding a solution or finding themselves, I give them direction. You know, I always have a funny little saying is that I refuse to have a battle of wits with an unarmed person. And people say, what does that mean? Well, I'm not going to try and, I don't give people my opinion, I give them my advice. And I have to make sure they understand and we're communicating first, because we can always agree to disagree. But I want to make sure that people understand and we're communicating before I communicate with them. Because I love to teach. And what I'm teaching is awareness. And that awareness is learn something new every day, be aware, tuck it away in your brain. You never know when and how you're going to use it.
Ron, I love your philosophies. I literally have notes from you
Oh,
from the
okay.
last time we actually were together in a meeting. And I wanted those philosophies to come across to a lot of the newer generations in how you handle yourself. Your schedule is full.
Yes.
Obviously, it's very full, yet you still maintain a personal life, you maintain a business life, you maintain a lot of things. What is the thinking when you're doing these things to keep up with everything where a lot of the newer generations tend to get boggled down with life? You seem to be able to handle things well. What is that philosophy?
Well, that's a lot. First of all, next week, my wife and I, my beautiful wife and I, will be married 61 years. That's a legend, okay?
Yes.
And, it wasn't easy. She puts up with a lot from me because of the type of personality I am, and everything's analytical with me, and I'm always thinking and teaching. But I learned so much from her. I learned how to contribute. I learned how to be compassionate in certain areas. And we both have tremendous common interests. We love and live by animals. She's a great contributor to the health and welfare of all animals, all species, companion animals, wild animals. And we both love animals, and we've been surrounded with animals all our life. Oh, yes. And she's reminding me, she's here in the office. We have wonderful grandchildren. We got married very young. Arlene was 19, I was 24 after I came back from the Korean War. And we raised our children. We were very young. And it was such a pleasure because our children are also our best friends. We have a 59-year-old son, a 57-year-old daughter. Our oldest grandchild is 29. Then we have a 25-year-old. We have a 21-year-old and an 18-year-old. And they're all buddies and friends. And they don't look at me as the old man. They look at me as grandpa. Okay, I'm just grandpa. So it's how you present yourself. It's so important too in this world, independent of what you do, whether it be something minute as a contribution or something monumental. You don't need to tell people who you are. You have to be humble in this world because no one needs, if you are somebody that wants to be recognized or somebody that should be recognized because people want to thank you somehow, they'll find out. You don't have to go out with a megaphone making announcements, all right? Because if people see you on social media and they see what you're involved with or who you're speaking with or what's happening, they'll search you out. I mean, there's so much information out there today. You can find out who anybody is. But I don't walk around making announcements and holding my fingers under my armpit saying, look at me, who am I? I'm just plain Ron Klein, enjoying life, and I'm grateful for the fact that I'm still here after 85 years.
That's amazing. Ron, what is the best way for the listeners to get a hold of you and keep up with you?
Well, I had somebody that put together a wonderful website for me. So my website is thegrandfatherofpossibilities.com. Now, an easier way to get there is just go the number 4, ronklein.com, because it points to that. So it's the number 4, RONKLEIN.com, or the grandfather of possibilities.com. And on that website, there's so much information. There's so many blogs. There's so many videos and interviews and a lot to learn. And I'm pretty proud of it because I think it does great contribution. So anybody can go on that and take a look. If they want to see my latest invention for the blind, they can go on invisioneli.com /site, SIGHT. So that's envision with an E. ENVISION, Eli, ELI.com /site. And on that, they can download a free app. And from that free app, also on that site, is a sample label, because we have sample labels that they could use to just keep trying it. It's re-recordable, and there's enough narrative on that website they can learn all about it. And then what we actually do, and I even have a package here, I turned my invention of the little labels into this little book that the blind people can carry around. It has these little special QR labels in it, QR coded labels. And it's a book of 100. The app is free. The little book runs $29. But who wouldn't invest in $29 of reusable adhesive labels? And they can even give a percentage. I give a percentage of that back to an institution of their choice. So they can learn all about it on the web and know what I'm doing for the blind. If they just go envisioneli.com, they learn about how it's applied to the sighted too, because now I take information and store it in the cloud. But I'm out there. They can find out if they're interested. And I'm delighted to contribute and inspire anybody out there that's listening, because you want to keep going until you're empty. And it takes a long time to become empty, because we learn something new every day and we share it.
Ron, you are full of incredible knowledge and wisdom, and the way that you live is very inspiring. To just see that an ordinary man that has stepped out of the thinking of what isn't possible to what is truly possible, and solving issues as you go along to make them better, to really look at people and go, what is it that they are in need of that I can solve? And not just looking at it that way, you've also looked at it from a perspective of that it's got to provide a benefit and it's got to have some financial rewards for you and others.
Right.
What's that philosophy?
The philosophy is most important to simplify. Well, here's what I say. And here you have to have a mission, a vision, and a purpose. The mission is what you do and how you can enhance it and how you can grow with it. The vision is you want to take it to some ultimate goal, maybe to infinity. And a purpose, that's a little bit harder to come up with, because most people think that a purpose has to be associated with a mission. My purpose is always to be a contributor and not be a burden to anyone, not to society, not to individuals, not to my family. So try and be as responsible as possible so you can manage your health, be as healthy as possible, but try not to be a burden. So that's a mission, vision, and purpose. People should think about that. But it's so important to really look at life as we're here to make things better. And everybody has the same ability and to try. Like I always keep saying, you don't have to be the sharpest knife in the drawer. You just have to stop and think, well, what can I do to make things better? How can I help?
Ron, I sincerely appreciate your time and energy today. And thank you, Arlene, for being present. How are you?
There she is.
Hi.
How are you? Fantastic. Nice to see you.
I'm always interested. I always am interested in hearing the story over and over again.
It's quite amazing. And it's beautiful to see the life that you guys have lived together for all these years.
I keep them on track.
She keeps me on track. And I learned so much.
And I do all his social media.
Oh, she's wonderful.
And, I stepped back from my own world because the dogs got old, the dogs passed. I've come off of many boards after 20 years. I'm boarded out. And I just had to swing into action with him. And here we are. We're still pumping away, but I still keep my finger in the pot with the animals.
She's a great editor and writer. She wrote my book, The Grandfather of Possibilities, which is on Amazon, by the way. And that's my biography. and she did a phenomenal job. She's a wonderful writer, and she's in many books, and she has edited many books. So she's good.
The animals are my genre. Doing his was a little out of the box. So I'm glad to know I did a good job.
You do a fantastic.
What I do for a living.
I'm sorry?
You do a fantastic job of keeping each other going. What is a great secret for a lot of couples out there?
Communication.
Communication.
Respect. Pick your battles.
Right.
Just have patience and be grateful. Be grateful for the years that you have. You don't realize until you're much older and later in life that word gratitude means everything. It means everything. And especially in the middle of pandemics, be grateful for what you have. Don't complain about what you don't have, because as my son-in-law said, we're all in the same sea. We're not all in the same boat. There's some people that have just been hit so hard and have lost everything. And now fires and floods and hurricanes, and it's a bit much for people to handle. So we just have a good time. Keep all the busy schedules keep us out of trouble. And we have a gorgeous cat here, and she's hiding somewhere. I'm not sure, but she would certainly be the hit of your program if she would appear. But she's a beautiful rag doll. Are you familiar with rag dolls? The ragdoll cat?
Yes, I am, because a friend of ours that Ron also knows, Deborah, she actually raises them. So
yes.
Oh, Deborah, that's right.
That's right.
I'm familiar
she
with
and I
them.
spoke at length. They're gorgeous animals, gorgeous animals. So anyway, all dogs went to heaven. One cat went to heaven. 11 precious babies took a piece of my heart, and this one needed a home. And Deborah couldn't believe this was a rescue. This was a purebred that owner surrendered, and I took her. So life is good. Life is good. I wish you well. I'm so glad to meet you. Stay healthy. Stay safe. Where are you located?
I'm in California.
Oh, goodness gracious.
It's great. I'm in California.
Oh, just stay safe. I'm so sorry for what's going on there.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to thank you both so much for your
Bye-bye.
time
Thank
and
you so
energy.
much.
Thank you,
Thank
Arlene.
you for inviting us,
And
really.
you stay well. I sincerely appreciate all of your contribution.
I hope it inspires someone, and I hope it inspires as many as we can, because we all have that opportunity. We just have to take advantage of it.
Thank
Think
you.
positive. You get what you
Yes.
wish for.
And that's exactly, yes.
You get what you wish for.
Very
so only
much.
wish for good things and be grateful for every day.
Thank you, Ron. I sincerely appreciate you. You guys have a fantastic day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.